Today we're beginning our journey through the book of Romans, and chapter 1 lays the foundation. It's not just an introduction, it's a theological thunderclap. Paul wastes no time getting to the core of the gospel and the human condition. From the heights of God's righteousness to the depths of human rebellion, Romans 1 opens the door to the entire argument that will unfold in the rest of the letter. Paul starts by introducing himself, not just as a letter writer, but as a servant of Christ Jesus, called to be an apostle, set apart for the gospel of God. And what's beautiful is how grounded this gospel is. It's not a new idea, it's something God promised beforehand through the prophets in the scriptures. It's about his Son, Jesus Christ, descended from David according to the flesh, and declared to be the Son of God in power by the resurrection from the dead. So, even in the opening verses, we see the full identity of Jesus, fully man and fully God, the promised Messiah and the risen Lord. And Paul makes it clear his mission is to bring about the obedience of faith among all nations. That phrase, obedience of faith, is key. Faith isn't just intellectual assent, it produces a life of allegiance to Jesus. Paul also expresses his longing to visit the believers in Rome. He wants to encourage them, yes, but also to preach the gospel to them. And that's important. Even Christians need the gospel. Paul doesn't see it as a message we graduate from. It's the power of God for salvation, day by day. And then we come to his theme statement, really the heartbeat of the whole letter. I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. That right there is the key. The gospel reveals a righteousness that comes from God. Not something we achieve, but something he gives through faith. This is justification by faith. This is how we, as sinners, are made right with a holy God. But then the tone shifts, and it gets heavy. Starting in verse 18, Paul begins to expose the depth of our human unrighteousness. He says that the wrath of God is being revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth. Now notice, it doesn't say people don't know the truth. It says we suppress it. That's very different. We suppress the truth. God has made himself known through creation. His eternal power and divine nature are clearly seen in what he has made. But humanity doesn't respond with worship or gratitude. Instead, we exchange the glory of God for images of created things. And that's where idolatry begins. Not just bowing down to statues, but exchanging the Creator for creation. It's a tragic trade. And because of this, Paul says 3 times that God gave them up. That's a sobering phrase. God's wrath isn't only about future judgment, it's already present in the world. When people persist in rebellion, God hands them over to their desires. He doesn't force us into sin, he lets us have what we crave. That's judgment in real time. And the result is a downward spiral. Disordered worship leads to disordered desires. Paul describes how even the most fundamental aspects of human nature, like sexuality, become distorted when God is pushed out of the picture. He specifically names homosexuality as one expression of this disorder. But it doesn't stop there. The list grows: envy, murder, strife, deceit, gossip, arrogance, disobedience to parents. It's a picture of humanity unhinged from its Creator. And perhaps most chilling of all, Paul says that even though people know God's righteous decree, they not only do these things, they approve of others who do them. In other words, sin isn't just tolerated, it is proudly celebrated. So what is Paul doing here? He's not just pointing fingers, he's building the case that the entire human race, Jew and Gentile alike, is guilty before God. Romans 1 is part 1 of that argument. The wrath of God is just, because we have rejected the knowledge of God given to us. Even without the law of Moses, we are without excuse. So as we step back for a moment, we begin to see the deep theological current running beneath this chapter. Paul's not just presenting scattered truths, he's laying the groundwork for the gospel. So what does Romans 1 teach us? That the gospel reveals God's righteousness, not something we earn, but something he gives through faith. That God's wrath is real, righteous, and already being revealed against persistent rebellion. That humanity is not innocent. We've suppressed the truth, exchanged the Creator for creation, and celebrated what God condemns. That idolatry is at the root of all sin, a worship disorder that leads to moral, relational, and spiritual collapse. That judgment isn't only future. God sometimes judges by letting us have what we desire apart from him. That general revelation leaves all people accountable because God has made himself known through creation. And that universal guilt is the necessary backdrop for understanding the grace of the gospel. Romans 1 doesn't end in hope, but that's intentional. Paul is preparing the soil. He wants us to feel the weight of our rebellion so we can feel the wonder of God's grace. This chapter humbles us. It silences our excuses. It dismantles our pride. And in doing so, it prepares our hearts for the good news of salvation through Jesus Christ.